U.S., Egypt, Qatar, and other countries will now return to negotiations to find a solution. But the former Israeli ambassador to the U.S. says the world should not be trying to stop the violence in Gaza. Instead, it should do nothing. Michael Oren writes in the Washington Post that, quote, Israel must be permitted to crush Hamas in the Gaza Strip, and that while Hamas will resist demilitarization and more civilians will suffer, by ending the cycle once and for all, thousands of innocent lives will be saved. And we're joined now from Tel Aviv. Michael Oren is with us. He's also a CNN Mideast analyst. Thanks so much for being with us. And I'm really hoping as well, this is a question that I asked of Marie Harf, the deputy spokeswoman at the State Department. The Israelis have rejected this latest ceasefire proposal. They have agreed, it appears, to this 12-hour pause as sort of a down payment, we're told. That's what Secretary Kerry has said. What do you think of this this brief ceasefire? Do you agree with it?
Well, if it's for humanitarian purposes, for people to get food, particularly the civilian population, that'd be fine. But it would be not in Israel's interest. It is not in America's interest. I don't think it's in the interest of the rational world to let Hamas off the hook this time. Repeatedly, we've been engaged in Israel in combat with Hamas and with Hezbollah in Lebanon. And every time it starts with the terrorists sending thousands of rockets at Israeli cities and towns, Israel responds. And then before Israel can win against the terrorists, some UN body comes along and imposes a ceasefire that basically lets the terrorists win. It enables them to replenish their missile stocks, to bring in bigger missiles, more long-range missiles, and then to choose the next time when they can fire at Israel. We got to break that cycle once and for all and defeat an organization, Hamas, which is no different than Al-Qaeda and ISIS, which hates the West and hates everything America stands for.
Make sense of this for us. We're hearing from a Haaretz reporter that the Minister of Defense is telling Israeli soldiers to be prepared for an expansion of the operation in Gaza. It seems like that, along with even this 12-hour ceasefire or pause, it seems like these are contradictory, doesn't it?
Well, not really. If the 12-hour pause, and again, I can't confirm that, Brianna, the 12-hour pause is designed to let the civilian population gather food. Some have to go to a bank and get money. To do that, that's fine. But the 12 hours will not let Hamas regroup and rearm. And that's what you don't want. And it won't. Israel has to finish this job to maintain the pressure on Hamas so that Hamas will receive a definitive defeat. And that definitive defeat will be read by other terrorist groups around the Middle East. It'll be interpreted, I think, correctly by Iran. And they'll draw, I think, the right conclusions not to take on Israel again and not to take on the West. I think it's essential for not just Israel's security, but America's security.
You say in your column, Michael, that it's noble what Secretary Kerry and Ban Ki-moon and others are doing, but you say that they should do nothing. We just heard from the State Department that that's not an option. I mean, it was almost in a way sort of laughed off that that would be something that the U.S. would go along with. Knowing that, what kind of conditions for a ceasefire do you think Israel might be able to agree to?
Well, I think that if people really care about peace in the Middle East and they really care about the Palestinians, because I think that both Palestinian civilians and Israeli civilians are victims of Hamas, then they'll let the Israeli forces do the job, and they're prepared to do the job. Brianna, I've come from funerals this week. I've come from sitting with the bereaved families of fallen soldiers. We're paying a very, very heavy price here, but the Israeli society is willing and ready to pay that price. I was ambassador in the United States during a very sad period where Americans were war-weary after long conflicts in Iraq and Afghanistan. We've been in conflict without let-up for 66 years, and we don't have the luxury of being weary. We don't have the luxury of bringing our troops home because they are home. We're fighting on their own soil. So the answer to your question is ceasefire. Hamas gives up its weapons. Hamas disarms. It is demilitarized. There can be aid for the people of the Gaza Strip. The border crossings can be open. Perhaps Israel can ease up its maritime blockade. There's something in this for the Palestinians, too. Moderate Palestinians can be strengthened and even deployed at some of those border crossings. But Hamas has to know that it hasn't won. And if Hamas is crushed, then terrorists throughout the entire Middle East will be crushed.
But, Michael, can you understand the international community is watching these pictures that are horrible. Children, Palestinian children, bleeding on television. These are moving images. There is no way that you cannot feel sympathy for these children who obviously, are just innocent victims. Essentially, in your column, it seems like you're asking for a smaller price of life to be paid now instead of a larger price later. But can you really imagine the international community going along with accepting that in the short term?
Those pictures are deeply painful to me too, Brown, and to everybody here. And nothing is worse than civilian suffering. Hamas has brought on that suffering. Hamas has dug deep beneath that civilian population. It's using that population as a human shield. Today, it wasn't widely reported in the American press, but hundreds of Palestinian civilians have surrendered to Israel forces, saying that Hamas has threatened them, that if they try to leave combat areas that Israel has warned them to leave, they'll be shot by Hamas. That's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with an organization that uses children to dig these terror tunnels. It is not a rational, modern organization. It's murderous. It's genocidal. It seeks to kill not only all Israelis, but to kill all Jews worldwide. If we do not crush it now, Hamas will restore its arms. There'll be bigger rockets, long-range rockets. The next round will take an even higher price in civilian life. By letting Israel crush Hamas now, we will save lives in the long run.
All right. Really appreciate your perspective. Former Israeli ambassador to the U.S., Michael Oren, thank you.